there is that, I think, a big gain from the discipline as well as the philosophy. Do you agree, Enrico? You've been around for a while and you code.
Having done both universes, it's really interesting, having lived in both universes, that the cognitive processes of a clinician and a programmer are so different.
Yeah.
And the only way to really understand the world of software is to get your head in that space.
Yeah.
But equally, we'd like, software guys to understand what it's like to reason about patient cases, and it goes both ways.
Yeah, and I think some of the physicians may think differently as a clinician, having a different background, just like they talk about liberal arts and computer science. It adds a layer of creativity.
Maybe it's easier for a clinician to dabble in a little Python programming than for a programmer to dabble in a little surgery.
In cardiac surgery, okay. Yeah. I don't know, in the future, who knows, right? Okay.
What's always surprised me is that psychology and neuroscience don't require any kind of computer program experience. And I think psychology is about reverse engineering the brain. The best metaphor we have is a computer. It might be wrong, but if you don't even understand that metaphor, I don't know how you get started.
Yeah, no, great insight. Okay, let's go to the next survey. If we incorporate a half-day datathon at AIMed next year, so datathon is sort of like a hackathon where we spend, clinicians and data scientists spend time together for half a day and solve a clinical problem with a publicly accessible database. And I just heard from a big company they're willing to actually donate data as well as Mimic 3. So we'll have access to a good database in medicine. Would the clinicians mainly be willing, and the data scientists be willing to spend half a day next year during this meeting and be part of that datathon? Yes, no? Is that a maybe? Yeah, maybe.
It'd be nice if it was longer, or if it was like at the start and there was a way during the rest of the conference to
finish it up?
Hack away, because like half a day,
yeah,
I'm not going to get anything done. But if there was some way to kind of keep in touch with the people I met in that half day over the next 3 days, that would
Well,
be
the clinicians are probably saying, well, half a day I might, but anything more than that I won't. Right?
But I mean, it'd be nice to just make sure that we actually came out the other end with something pretty awesome.
We'll make it so that we sort of satisfy both the clinicians and the data scientists. Because as I said, I was at a datathon courtesy of Leo in Beijing. It was 2.5. It was Friday afternoon to Sunday night. It was pretty grueling. I was really impressed that the clinicians all stayed throughout the whole process. It's very impressive. Okay. And a few no's, I guess, huh? Okay. All right, so we can take the screen off. Oh, just, leave it on the platform there. So we'll see if we, okay. Is someone from Tata Communications here know about the first question, or the Chief Medical Officer for McLaren?
These are all from yesterday. These are all from yesterday.
Okay.
How about some live questions from live members of the audience instead of... Can we do that, even though we can't really see you? Does anybody have a live question? Wave really, just yell out your questions, because we can't see you.
In the meantime, let's try to get the platform up and running live.
Have you guys all
We have
been
machine
trained to
live,
text instead of use your voices?
Machine live and human live, both kinds of live.
I'll wander around the audience. Anybody have a question? I'll come to you. If I can see anyone.
Meantime, any other comments about...
We have a question.
Okay.
Yesterday, I think it was, somebody mentioned with liability that in legal cases, if a physician relies on AI support and they get a bad outcome, that they can be held liable.
Yes.
And it's only a matter of time, I think, since currently they're using clinical guidelines, that those guidelines will be incorporated into some sort of AI support, and physicians will be held liable for not using the AI support. And that's really at the cliff of making physicians in their decision-making clinical process obsolete. So I was wondering if any of you think that's something that we'll be seeing in the next 5 years, 10 years, never going to happen.
Before we answer that, can we kill the lights that are sort of blinding us up here, or turn it down? And maybe we have the house lights up a little bit too, and we can still see the screen that way. That's a nice compromise. Good. Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
let's-
I can kick it off. So I wouldn't be surprised if having to use sort of these AI tools becomes standard and part of clinical practice. I don't see them replacing the clinician anytime soon, though. A clinician is just doing way too much. Like if you look at a radiologist, say, they're looking for way too many different pathologies in a single scan that it's going to take a series of algorithms that are all to be very accurate to not have false positives, for instance.
But in general clinical practice, where the physicians are being reduced to decision-making, and they're being held liable for not following clinical guidelines, as AI become the standard of care, and their deviation from that standard will put them in a situation of being held liable, then you don't need them anymore.
I mean,
I-
so I
I-
guess...
I would remind you of something I said yesterday, which is that computers are illiterate. So at least for the foreseeable future, let's say for the next 10 years, I don't think there's any way they're going to supplant the clinician as being the final arbiter. I was looking today as an outsider at some of the plain text that is in EHRs and things like that. There's just no way machines are going to be able to read them. So there's no way that a machine is going to be able to make a completely integrated judgment in the next decade. I still think your question is really interesting. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting litigation. Like, what if the company who made the AI software just made a plain out mistake? Should they then be held liable? And there's certainly an argument that they should. So I think there's going to be some very complex litigation and laws and so forth. But the end game of what you described, I don't think we're close to. I think there are going to be lots of places where AI can help, but it's going to be more like, I noticed that you didn't try this test. May I suggest that you do it? It's not going to be making the ultimate decision, I think, in most cases for a while, because the systems can't read what's in the case history.
As I said, there's a wonderful editorial in the New York Times a couple of months ago that humans are ultimately so responsible, has the final accountability, no matter what kind of AI you use in some fields, and I imagine for medicine as well.
Anthony, before it jumps off the screen, could I ask us to look at one of these, which is about data sharing?
Yeah.
Because I'm really interested in this question. How do we come together and pull data sets, and who leads the charge? IT, data scientists, clinicians, like everybody, I think, agrees that this should be happening.
Yeah.
And I've been spending 3 or 4 years on this, and I still don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I think the quick answer is because most data scientists do not have a hospital position or not in the hospital, it would be more difficult to be a champion and go in
So
and get the data.
who at the hospital?
So it'll have to be the clinicians on behalf of a team that consists of data scientists to get the data and convince the C-suite that is as a matter of fact, ironically, we're doing that the Friday after the meeting with the hospital. So I think that the clinicians that appreciate what all of you do, who are not the clinicians here at this meeting, and want to say that that's the right thing to do, and they'll have to be your temporary champions because we like all of us to be champions at some point.
I found clinicians to be great champions, but I found them not to know how to navigate the IT side to actually know what data do you actually have, where does it come from, and so they, I find they can get stymied for years by questions about how to anonymize it, how to access it, how to navigate the IT stuff.
But that's what
Yeah.
often clinicians are CIOs and CMIOs, so those are good people.
Yeah, and I would say that, so what you see is a collaboration, right, a team, and that you need to have all three. So you need to have at the executive leadership level, but it becomes substantiated by the efforts of the clinicians who are engaged in those practices, and then certainly thirdly by the integration of the role of the IT organization as part of that. So you really have to have all three components, and if you study across those solutions where they've been most successful, then you find that those three elements are present in those initiatives.
Yeah, so just my 2 cents on this is that besides these three, I think the government has to also, in a way, look at mandating some of that data sharing, in my opinion, because like especially in pediatric healthcare, I mean, it's of critical importance. I still don't understand till today why I work for Children's Hospital of Los Angeles and not like Children's Hospital.
I think the patients are going to be a huge part of that drive too. You're going to get the patients who are going to be up there and going to be saying, yes, I will share my data. And those are going to be a huge driver to both the clinicians and to everybody else to say, okay, yes, we should be doing this. Because I think the patients are going to be the ones who say, why aren't you doing this already? I mean, I've been saying that for 6 years. Why can't I call Dana-Farber and say, email my physician and she'll email you my scans? Why do I have to physically drive 45 minutes to pick up a disc from a different hospital to then drive it another 45 minutes to the hospital where it has to go? It's this. I think the patients are going to be a huge part of that drive.
Mike, tell the story about patient record privacy and your comment that sort of shook the whole meeting. Just briefly tell about that story, because I think that's very memorable.
So we were.
I'm sorry, Michael Fitzgerald and Kezia are my guests for this session. They're parents of children with medical conditions.
We had a daughter pass away of neuroblastoma 6 years old today. And then just a few months after that, we were attending a conference for neuroblastoma, and Spiro, who's out there in the audience somewhere, was on stage. And there was somebody who was, we were talking about data sharing and privacy and HIPAA and a program that was going to be developed. And there was a gentleman on stage, and I won't say who he was, who was very firm in saying, parents can't have access to this data because that'll freak them out. They won't know what to do with it. And I just stood up in the middle of everything and shut the whole thing down and said, you know what freaks parents out? When their kids die. Okay, let's open our brain up a little bit more. And I think he took time of offense. Spiro laughed. I thought he was going to have to leave the stage, but we're very serious about that. When it comes to data sharing, the bottom line is, it's a child, but this child is very sick. We're parents, and we're telling you to share that data, everything that you can learn from my child, with everyone else you can. I don't care about HIPAA, personally. I really don't. I don't care what people know about my child and the illness that they have. I don't care about really the fear some people have of reading data and freaking people out. Because the reality is if we don't start stepping up to the plate a little bit stronger, and we're around the people who are, and you're all doing that, we're going to keep stuck right where we are. And parents are going to still get freaked out about their kids dying, because it's always going to be that way. So, you know, step up to the plate a little bit, take an initiative, and take a few risks. And if you get slapped around by the FDA a little bit in the government, then get slapped around, but then keep going and slap them right back. And that's my personal opinion about it. Yeah.
So first of all, I've kind of been there recently. Luckily, in my case, my wife is going to need brain surgery, and luckily she didn't pass away, thank God. But we had a similar situation where a neurorad did a misread. And at the time, I was running a computer-aided diagnostic for radiology company that knew how to read the scan, and I wanted to get it and send it to my team 3 blocks down the road, where we had an algorithm that outperformed the 4 best radiologists that had looked at it, and I couldn't, you know. And that drove me crazy. So one of the things I'm now doing, which is really interesting to build on both of your comments, is there's a company I'm involved in called Doc.ai. I don't know if you've come across it, but what we're doing is we're providing an app on a phone where you can basically, it lets you log into Quest, lets you log into LabCorp, Sutter Health, downloads your data set to your phone, which you're legally allowed to do. And at that point, it is screw HIPAA, right? Because at that point, it's now your patient data on your patient phone, and then you can share that with Doc.ai, and then we make it available to data scientists. And so the guy who started it, and the husband and wife team that started it, they have a kid who's very sick. And they were thinking like, you know, we've got all these parents in this group who want to help the kids with this sickness, you know, rare disease, as so many kids' sicknesses are. How do we do this? And they realize this is a way. And so now we're starting to talk to insurance companies to bring them into the loop. Yeah. And I think this patient-led approach could be huge.
You know, that visual map of the healthcare system in the United States, and you can, I think whichever speaker used that, you can literally Google U.S. healthcare system, and the visual map is this amazingly complex diagram. I think, you know, the U.S. needs some sort of health data, health information czar to get that entire mess organized, because we're not going to have a 9/11 moment like with the intelligence community that finally got that whole community organized, at least answer to one director nationally. Everyone has their own 9/11 moments, unfortunately, but collectively as a society, we're not. So we're going to have to be very patient and force this issue from the patient perspective, in addition to the clinicians.
So there is one, the Office of the National Coordinator for Health Information Technology. David Brailer was the first under Bush, and then there's been some subsequently. And what the incredible frustration has been is what we're all talking about here. You would think, as a patient, you would own your data. It's about you, right? It was collected from you somehow, but you actually don't. If that data is stored in an electronic health record, it's owned by the hospital, who has a license from that EHR company. And you actually cannot extract it, even as a patient. And I do not say this at all to undermine that the change should be driven by patients. It should, but that's why you see so much excitement, I think, around Google allowing you to store your genetic code for $29 a month. Because your genes, your genotype, you actually do own, unlike your health data. Ish, maybe?
I just want to check, because I mean, I'm not an expert at this, and I'd love to talk more about it, but my understanding is that's not true. Like, when I spoke to Todd Park, who was doing the thing at VA, where the blue button that allowed people to download their electronic medical records, he did that, he said, so that people would know actually patients do own their EMR records. Like, that was meant to be the government here has built this thing, a button you can press, and so now there are other big companies like Candle Health and so forth that let you download your medical records. I don't think the EMRs necessarily make it easy, but my understanding is that once you download it, it is yours.
So
I thought.
I can tell you from sort of my experience, a lot of these formats are proprietary. So even if you're allowed to, even if as a hospital, a lot of times for us it's hard to physically get the data. It's in some locked format, and we need to go talk to the vendor and say, hey, can we access it? And they say, sure. You know, a couple $100,000 and you get the converter. Sure, why not? And for them, it's 15 minutes of work. For us, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, the whole sales process, et cetera. But I think another point, too, there's a lot of discussion on how patients can drive this process. And I think to a certain extent they're going to be able to, but I don't think it's going to be on an individual case-by-case basis for the data. I think it's going to be more of at a national level, because the amount of data you need to train these algorithms, you just can't, it's not going to scale at a patient level. You're going to need a larger, more collected effort saying, give me, put them in a central repository somewhere. It's going to be very challenging to get 10,000 patients with a specific disease to all give their data to a specific group so they can train a model.
But I do think ultimately the patients will have to leverage to get the data liberated, because I think the clinicians are trying, but it's going to be the patients that will ultimately, as a group, I think, have the most impact. May?
Yeah, so I want to make a comment here, also a suggestion for AI Med next year. Maybe we can invite health policy people to come to our meeting, because I was invited to go to a meeting in European Parliament, and then the North European country representative from Norway discussed that in their country, we keep talking about it because privacy and security, that's why we refuse to share data. For their country, everyone has an ID. It's actually all publicized, everyone knows it. And as a result of the entire country's policies that there is no such issue, but indeed the real focus then become how to find the best solution based on global information available. So I think it is indeed a policy challenge beyond this debate. A lot of time we're doing a lot of ground debate and work. The truth is, it's all related to policy. Just talking about the adoption of EMR, that's a very good example for that. So we need to also push as the community together, and also the society together to push for such change, policy change.
Okay, so with this time left, I wanted to make sure everyone has an opportunity to say something, because we haven't heard from some people. So what I'd like to do is keep the mic. We're going to go around and do what we did yesterday. Tell us in a tweet, which is 140 characters, not 140 pages of script, what was the one thing today that impacted on you most today? We'll start with you, May. 140 characters. I'm sorry? To what?
It's 280 characters now.
I'm sorry. Okay. It's a tweet. Yeah, it's a tweet. Yes. Okay.
For AI to succeed this wave, we need a successful story. I think this is very important. Second one, for AI to really be translated to work in real medicine and health, physicians need to be proactive and take in charge. Don't be pushed out.
Okay. Let us know how you really feel. Let it off. You're being very mysterious about your feelings, okay?
These computers and tools are getting much more accessible. Unlike patients, you really can't break them. And just encourage everyone to get out there and play with them, experiment, and learn, and see what we can do.
AI has a lot more potential than just machine learning or deep learning. And if we can use data science to understand the basics of how DNA works, we can certainly use data science to understand how deep learning works.
Nice.
I think we're pretty close to reaching a tipping point on this issue of sharing data and having patients become more in control and curators of their data, and those topics, as well as the topic of bringing better medical care to the vulnerable classes in our society, the elderly in particular, afford better medical care. That's going to be the pushing issue. I think that's going to drive a lot of this.
That's a tweet for a lawyer. That's pretty good, Jim. Okay. Annette?
I think the issue about responsible AI is coming up now, and I heard also something today about it, so I was quite happy about it.
Yeah, I think the power of AI for automation and technologies like robotic process automation that actually magnifies automation. We need to be careful as to what automation can bring, and we need to be mindful of what automation, the disadvantage of automation as well.
I'll save my remarks for tomorrow morning.
Not even a tweet from you? Not even a tweet from you?
I'll give you a hint what I'm going to say tomorrow morning. I'm going to beg you all for help tomorrow. Stay tuned.
There you go. So I think my tweet would be that patients are still people. So hopefully when integrating AI, it will bring doctors back to the ability to treat patients less as numbers and more as people.
I've always felt since we kind of got thrown into the healthcare field that physicians and everybody involved in healthcare needs to take more of a proactive approach versus a reactive approach. And I truly believe that AI can help make that, which is going to save a lot of lives, it's going to make people feel better, and it's going to improve a quality of life for sick people.
Don't be overwhelmed by this idea that you need lots of data. It's actually not that true. This superhuman pathology result done yesterday was with just 200 slides.
Yeah.
You can do a lot with a little data and just one GPU. Furthermore, pretty much every medical imaging case I've done uses basically the same algorithm. We don't need lots of algorithms. There's really one basic algorithm for medical imaging, one basic one for NLP.
Algorithms don't deliver care, health systems do, and I was excited to see the discussion about how we embed AI into the process of care starting to come to the fore today.
So I think everyone here understands that medicine is a business, but at the same time, I think it's really important to hear patient stories like that or the stories of the parents and keep those in mind when you're developing these solutions. I think that's what motivates a lot of us in the field to actually keep doing this work, even if you are fighting challenges like siloed data and things like that.
I think it would be both interesting and important to have a consensus around success metrics for AI's impact on patient outcomes, lives saved, dollars saved, terrible things averted, et cetera. But I think having some key qualifiable metrics, even if you debate the definitions, will help elevate the discussion and bring way more people into it.
Nice, very nice. So knowledge is a combination of both cognitive as well as intuitive information, and I think we forget sometimes and take for granted the human connection and our intuition. And I don't think that we should allow for AI to be something that we fear, but something that we embrace and continue to include the human element, which is really undefined and the most ultimate of unstructured, if you will, that really plays into the better decisions and the better outcomes for families and for community.
That was a long tweet, but it was well said.
I think as we are teaching the AI algorithms, I think we should not overlook how much that process actually teaches us about the nature of humanity and the nature of care and healthcare and empathy.
And I would just add that AI is here. The clinicians, as clinicians, we need to not control it, we need to guide it, and the people who can't handle it just need to retire.
That's Jim Fackler, a very good friend and colleague of mine who has been in the ICU business for a long time. We kind of saw this coming even 10, 20, 15 years ago. Okay.
I would say AI is advancing incredibly rapidly, and I think it's incumbent upon us to we really need to get medical student education to be a part of this, and I think the next meeting needs to involve, the AAMC and other individuals that teach medical students.
You remember from last year we did have Stephen Wortman here, who is the president of the Academic Hospital Association, and he's fully embracing AI now. So, yeah.
So I would say most of AI does not need patient identification. So I'd like to see institutions work very close to each other to get de-identified and anonymized and create like a data ocean, not even a data lake.
Hashtag wake up. We've got to catch up. Just do it.
Such a Texan. Okay.
I have an easy job. I agree with everybody saying, but look at the people, process, technology. We have an AI, we know BI, we got to bring back CI, clinical intelligence, clinician intelligence, that make sure that happens.
Well, all I can say is, what a privilege for me to have, talk about the heterogeneity of this group of faculty and the people here with a passion to help save lives and the intellect that we have. It's going to be the most exciting 2 decades in medicine. So with that, I'd like to close our second day and look forward to the third day when we talk about innovation and what's coming in AI in healthcare medicine. So have a good evening. And for the faculty, we'll see you at dinner. Thank you very much.